All right, this is Montana Mini with Assembla, and I'm here with John Scott. He need no introduction. He's been in the gaming industry, programming kind of on the front lines here for a very long time. Some of your favorite companies out there like Epic, working at Raven, made helped make Soldier of Fortune too. I don't know, maybe I'm wrong about that, but it was one of my favorite games. So anyway, so I'm gonna hand the floor over to John Scott, and we'll go from there.
Good day, everyone. Today we will be doing the second in a series of 3 webinars demonstrating Assembler Visual Assist with Unreal Engine 5. Today we will download Unreal Engine 5 source from GitHub and add to a single tenant instance in Assembler. In the first webinar, which we won't be recovering in this one, we went over the prerequisite software, the pros and cons of downloading the binary version versus compiling from source, why Perforce is the preferred solution for game development, discussed pfile config, the type map and stream specs, created an assembler account at Perforce repository, added a sample project to it, did a sample content change, and then demonstrated on the Mac. For the record, the machine I'll be using is this detailed here. It's a Threadripper Pro, 32 core, 64 thread, 128 gigabytes of memory at 3200 megahertz. Typically, the goal is 2 gigabytes of RAM per core thread for compilation. 5 terabytes of storage, which is all NVMe, which is critical for compile times. I'd recommend something of this power, otherwise you'll be spending the vast majority of your day waiting for compilation to finish. First step is to create an Epic Games account, as shown in the first webinar. Create a GitHub account, and then link the accounts. You go to epicgames.com, click on your profile, click Account, click Linked Accounts, select GitHub, and follow instructions. You will then get an email welcoming you to the Epic Games GitHub repository. That's where we'll continue from. After linking your accounts, Epic Games will send you an invite to this organization on GitHub. This is what you'll see. So what we do is we go down to the Unreal Engine branch and we click on Code, Download Zip. Opening in GitHub Desktop still uses Git, and we want to use Perforce, so there's no point in that. This may take a little while depending on your internet connection. Control A, Control C, to D, create a new folder called Epic, a new folder UE5.6, master. Control V. This may take a little while, and finally finished decompressing. It took about 15 to 20 minutes overall. And the next step is to run setup.bat. So let's go to where we installed, open in terminal, run setup. This takes a while, so I suspect we'll be doing the fast forward again. At this point, you'll be tempted to run generate project files, load in the project and try to compile it. I would recommend that. I would check everything in first, so you don't check in any temporary files. So let's go to, here's a server that Andre kindly created for me earlier. That, and my user is that. And I'll browse, trust the fingerprint, enter the password, which I obviously won't give to you here. We have no workspaces. Okay, let's connect without a connection. Yes, and yes. So let's create a new depot. Tools, administration, depots, file, new, depot. Yeah, call it depot. Owner is us. Want to stream. We want it too deep, definitely, for better branching strategies down the road. Apply. Okay. We now have a depot. Before we set up the required streams, let's discuss some security items. You can never be too secure. Tools, administration. First of all, users and groups. Permissions. So what we can do here is, by default, the user remote has full access to everything, which is quite strange. So what we recommend is use this line here to block every user from everything in all depots, and then specifically enable specific users or groups as and when needed. Next up, we have the configurables. So as Andre set up the server, some of the less secure options are already made it more secure, but let's go over a few. So security, for example, this should be at least 2 or 3. as you can see, strong password or a strong password and ticket-based authentication. Otherwise, you can if you set it to 0, it can be you don't even need a password, which for a server that's available on the internet, that is a very bad idea. Min client. Some of the old P4Vs can be a performance hit, as the server has to jump through hoops to support older versions. So this is a 2023.1 version of P4V. If it's older than that, it will give you the message in client message, and so let's set that for any. Please update P4V to 2023.1 or later. Run.users.authorize. So that by default, unauthenticated user can list the users on the server. They can then use this user list to try and brute force hack your server. You really don't want to do that. dmuser.noautocreate. By default, if a client or anyone, even an unauthenticated user, tries to access a user that doesn't exist, the Perforce server will helpfully create it for you, which is quite a usability feature, but something you don't want when you're paying on a per license basis. Then we have dmpassword.minlength. Password needs to be at least 8 characters. You can go to 10 or 12 or 27 if you like. Another one is several dm.user ones. dm.user. Set initial password. So only a super user can set the initial password for a new user. Always good. And also dmuser.reset password. Any new user is required to change the password they used to log on that was given to them by the super user. Then there's dminfo. This will hide some private information that appears when you run the p4 info command. The less information out there, the better. And also there's dmuser.hideinvalid. So if a user tries a command and it's an authentication failure, no error will be reported. This is to mitigate the effects of brute force hacking. That's generally speaking as well. You can do multifactor authentication for a server, for a Perforce server. This is quite a pain to set up and requires compilation and installing a plugin from GitHub. I wouldn't recommend that. What is much easier is to install a VPN, and a VPN with multi-factor authentication. So then you're behind the VPN and it's that the multi-factor authentication is built in at that point. Also, cloud providers can typically whitelist IPs or whitelist IP ranges. If you're all working in the same office, then you should be fine. That helps a lot with that. If you're a set of remote users all over the world, then that is quite a pain to set up, especially if your developers have dynamic IPs. Now let's create a set of streams to do development. Let's go to streams. We'll be doing mainline development. Let's create a new stream. Stream, let's have path is main. Stream folder mainline. It's created in main. It's the mainline. Let's not create. Let's not populate. Okay. Now let's create a stream to submit the master of UE 5.62. So let's go to view, stream graph, there's mainline, new stream. Stream name is going to be master, stream folder, UE 5.6. It's in the master folder. Nope, it's a development branch. And then we go. Okay, please choose a path from parent stream. Parent stream, of course, is going to be mainline. Down, show that, apply. Now let's create some temporary streams for development work. New stream, path 1, dev, John. It's a development branch, stream, mainline, nav, new stream, dev, Montana. It's a development branch, parent stream, mainline. Okay, and then let's make finally a release branch, alpha, release. It is a release branch. Browse from mainline again. Okay, so what you typically do, with the exception of the master here, you every morning when you come into work, you merge from mainline, so you get everyone else's change. You resolve your stuff. Once you're happy and all your code is working, debugged and everything, then the mainline and your branch are identical, so you copy up and everything's good. Once in a while, when you want to make a release, you copy from mainline up to alpha or release or beta or version 1 or whatever, and then you don't touch that. The only thing you do in there is hot fixes, which you then merge down to mainline. Let's make, for when you eventually go to UE 5.7, let's do that. So we'll have, oh no, it's going to be in dev 7 merge. It is a development branch and it will be from mainline. And then what you do here is from here, you have a new stream. Stream name is master UE 5.7. And it is a development branch from the development branch with a parent of UE 5.7 merge, which is that one. Okay, so what will happen is the developer working on this will sync from mainline every day to get your latest changes that you've been working on in your company. Sorry, first of all, he'll copy up from UE 5.7 to here. It will then merge down to UE 5.7 merge, do that every morning, work through all the resolves, make everything work, make sure the new engine version is great and ready to roll, and once that's done, you can copy up. And obviously you can do the same with 5.8, 5.9, 5.10, etc. Now we have created a bunch of streams, but we have no workspaces. So we need to work on that and populate some of these streams. So let's start with new workspace. It's going to be Eldercar UE 5.6 to this PC D Epic. Stream browse. This is going to be UE 5.6. There we go. Switch to new workspace. Okay, we've populated it, so we want to use that. Bingo. Let's try adding some files to the stream, shall we? Let's add the root files. Right mouse click, mark for add. Default change list. Control S to submit. Just adding a set of small files to make sure everything is working fine. As there are 250,000 files here, adding them all in one change list is very time consuming, and should anything go wrong, you'll have to start from scratch. So in that case, you add one folder at a time. So let's add the templates folder. Thinking 5085 files opened for add. Let it update. Templates folder. There we go. Mark for add. Samples folder. I'm going to skip adding the rest as this is majorly boring. However, we'll recommend adding each one of these one by one. I shall do that and come back to you. Everything is added at last. Just to do a double check, we can do a reconcile offline work to see if we're missing anything. So we have the resource files for the NVIDIA texture tools. Let's see if there's anything wrong with them on GitHub. Engine, source, third party, NV texture tool. Here we see 8. That's the classic problem with UTF-16 getting confused with regular text files. This has annoyed me in the past to the point where I actually made a utility to fix up and remove all UTF-16 files from a repo and fix up this problem here. If you search for UTF-16 must die on GitHub, you will get the application. You will have to compile it yourself, as the Perforce API for managed C# does not. It sits on top of a native API, and you can't package a native API in a C# tool. So anyway, I'll just go and do that. As you can see, running UTF-16 must die fixed up these resource files, so they're now easy to read text. So let's submit those. If you want to go behind the reasoning why this happens, look at the README in the UTF-16 must die repo. And if you want to understand why you should always be using UTF-8 in every circumstance, then go to UTF-8 everywhere. Also, it went through and iterated over every UTF file in the repo and converted them all to UTF-8. I'm going to revert these because we want the version in the master to be as similar as possible to what we downloaded from GitHub. But if you wish to save some space, you can go through the localization folder in the manifest and archives and just keep the manifest and the English archive if you're an English speaker, or the manifest, English and your native language. That can save a little bit of space. Obviously, this file here is for testing UTF-16 handling in Python, so don't check that one in. All these. Now let's copy all the files up to the mainline so we can start mainline development. First of all, we need a workspace. So let's create a workspace, new workspace. Car main. Workspace root is good. Stream is going to be mainline. Go, switch to a new workspace immediately. Now we can go to the stream graph. As you can see, there's a green arrow here saying there are changes in 5.6 that need to go to mainline. So let's copy files to mainline. Stream to stream, source stream, target stream, automatically submit, default change, copy. This will take a while. So we're going to hit the fast forward button. I gave up recording in the fast forward. I just cut. So you should have just seen a nice fancy transition. So now we have all the files in the main branch. So let's generate the project files. This shouldn't take long. It's a C# compilation. As you can see, it didn't generate for all platforms. It didn't generate for platforms that didn't have the correct SDK installed. As long as Windows is installed, I'm good with that. And we're all good. Let's open the solution that was just generated. So let's refresh that. Be in here somewhere. Refresh. Bingo. UE5 solution. Studio. Always. As you can see, there are quite a few projects. As you can see, we are missing some of the extra components for a full development experience. I'm just going to stop the video and install those. Welcome back. I installed all the NuGet packages that were out of date and had security flaws, and added the tools that weren't installed by default into Visual Studio. As you can see, there are quite a few CS projects that were updated with old references. Just let me submit those. Let's do a revert unchanged files. Check on any one of these, shall we? This one changed, so we updated these dependencies. That is all good. Now we can finally compile. Right mouse click. First of all, we want development, Win64, development editor, Win64, mouse click, build. It finally compiled. So now we create our first test project. This is the second time I've run the engine, as the first time it spent quite a bit of time compiling all the shaders. So we'll save on that, and watching a number countdown is not entertaining or informative. There we go, opened on the wrong screen. Move it to LDK main. Select folder. I'd recommend having two projects. The main project you do production work in, and a sandbox to play around in. Let's have the first person variant create. To get the project sandbox to appear in the Solution Explorer, which I would recommend, what you need to do is open up the sandbox.u project with Unreal Engine Editor, then go to Tools, New Class, add a blank class. Doesn't need to do anything, just completely blank like this, and then rerun Generate Project Files. That will make everything appear in here as it should do. Next up, set a startup project. There we go. So if you just hit F5, it will run that project. I forgot how much waiting there was when first creating projects. An unfortunate side effect of this is the video will appear quite choppy and disconnected at some points. Let's go back to Perforce and see what we have here. So in the stream graph, you'll see there have been changes to mainline. So the green arrow represents changes that should be merged down to the branches. We don't want to go to the UE5.6 master because that's the completely vanilla master of the source engine. We don't want to touch that at all. So let's create a new workspace here. Let's work in this stream. New workspace, John. Workspace name, LDK John. Put it parallel to the main and the master. That is a stream. Switch to new workspace. Okay, so let's populate the stream. This will take a while, so I'm going to pause the video. Sync up, get the latest revision. There should be 309,000 files. This will again take a while, so let's stop the recording. And it finished syncing. So let's go to here, browse to the workspace, double click on generate project files. Quite a few warnings, which I may work on cleaning up later. Go. Also copy in the p4 config. .text, so I can actually use that. Double click on the solution file, set Sandbox as a startup project. This is the integration check. I'd recommend you resolve these issues here. I think I have a few, but that's not really relevant to this webinar. Now this is the project, so hit F5 and that will eventually run the editor. I shall pause the video now, as this will take a long time. And after a good 20 minutes, the editor is now running with Sandbox. Now let's try and edit some code. Let's go and edit some engine code. Source, editor, what can we do? Audio, is there anything? Audio editor, private, pick one. Go. Let's just do a sample change. Let's add a comment, pointless comment, gets the... Now, any change you make to the engine, I'd recommend you comment with your company name, begin, and then your initials. So that will be JJS. And then tune end. Don't need the initials there. Therefore, whenever you're upgrading to a new version, you can search for Anduin. It will have any changes you make and the person to talk to about why they made those changes. And there we go. After connecting to the Perforce server and checking out, we have a local change in the engine. So if we go to the Perforce server, refresh, we have that change there. Sample change, submit. Now if we go to the stream graph, you'll see that there are changes that they want to go from John to mainline. So that is showing us that the mainline is out of date with this branch here. And that concludes the presentation part of this webinar. I hope it was informative. I know I skipped over a few things and took a few shortcuts, but that's what Q&A is for. Thank you very much for listening to me.
I suppose I should talk, shouldn't I? That is the the question is, you made a UE 5.7 merged and then a branch underneath it called 5.7. The 5.7 wants to be an unmodified master of UE 5.7, which has no changes whatsoever. So then you always have you can do a difference between the files in the 5.6 master to the 5.7 master to see what has changed, and also between your local 5.7, which you're working on upgrading, and the 5.7 master. So it keeps everything separate.
Oh, and to riff on that, John, really quick, and it does actually doing that simplify future upgrades.
Yes, it does do. It simplifies it. It keeps everything more contained. Speaking from experience, you can get into quite a mess with various different merging of different engine versions, and having them all isolated, having a kind of source of truth for what is supplied from Epic versus your working version is a definite boon.
And then this essentially lets the team go on without like polluting the upstream baseline, essentially.
Yes.
Okay, that makes sense.
Next question. Okay. What is your opinion about having just a single stream and use it to merge different versions of Unreal Engine progressively, instead of having one for each different Unreal version? You can do that if you want. The reason I did it like that is because you can do diffs between UE 5.6 and UE 5.7 rather than using the history in the master branch version to do that. So up to you, your preferred method of doing it. I suppose it's you're just using the history rather than differing between two different streams will be the difference there. So that would be definitely doable. Depends on your preference.
And you can always create a task stream.
This is true. Also, sometimes it's handy when you find a bug. Did this bug exist in UE 5.6? Did it this bug existing 5.7. So having completely separate masters hanging around is good for some blaming and finding where the problem actually lies. Question: my company has Perforce servers that are strictly IT controlled and do not have streams turned on. Any tips for setting up branch flows without streams? Short answer is no. It's been over a decade since I've actually done that. So I wouldn't feel confident on commenting on that.
Sure, what kind of, I'd like to know more about the IT controlled flows. I mean,
is that a large legacy repo that's been around for decades and they don't want to change anything?
I guess one thing is you can only cherry pick maybe
Yes.
upwards when it yeah, okay. All right, we're on the same page.
So yes, migrating from depots to streams is non-trivial, but Andre, I'm sure could help you do that should you move to Assembla. Andre, can you do that?
I assume that if a Perforce service is controlled by IT, it means it wasn't upgraded in ages. So what you need basically is to upgrade the P4D from an ancient version to a more recent one, but you have to do it gradually. There is a scheme how to upgrade from a very old P4D version to a new one. So you have to pick up the right version of P4D. And tips for setting up branch flows without streams. I'm not aware of such any flows that will work without stream. Basically, you will have to copy fully some depot in a separate depot, but it will have a payroll on the storage. Stream is an efficient way of creating a branch. So when you create a branch, you won't be using too much storage, but when you create a fully copy of a depot as a branch, it will be as large as the initial depot, so you will need a lot of space, and you won't be able to work with the branching as you can do it with streams. So you will have to use streams if you want to work with branching, because it will just make things simpler. But we definitely can take care for upgrading an older version of Perforce to a more recent one that supports streams. Basically, that would be the answer.
Question: how big does the repo usually get once UE5 and project files are inside Perforce? You don't check in the project files, they're generated on each client. But the project assets depends on lots of factors. Games, I think the biggest repo I've heard of, that Perforce depot I've heard of, is 56 terabytes. But just setting up the vanilla like we did, I think it's about 100 gigabytes. Can you, Andre, can you quickly check on the size of the repo that we just checked in on that test single tenant server?
Yes, about 40 gigabytes.
40 gigabytes, so it's the content that takes up the room now. As soon as you start generating assets, especially nanite assets, then that is going to explode. Are there any more questions? Montana, do you have any questions from my video?
I think that's it, John. It's actually really helpful.
Thank you very much. As always, we all reply to emails. If you're interested in a single tenant instance for hosting your Perforce server, which is purely managed by us and we guarantee lots of uptime, then talk to our marketing department, getassembla.com, and look at the dedicated P4 Cloud product. You want to sign us out, Montana?
Yeah, so this has been a great Q&A, and also you can always email me, just like Montana, straight up at assembla.com if you have any questions regarding this, or if you have any trouble setting up UE5 with Assembla or Perforce, or whatever questions you may have, feel free to email me, and we'll get it fixed and we'll work through it. So that's one of the beauties about these things. So
Thank you very much.
all right, thanks everyone. Thanks, John.
With that, good day.